DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We're joined now by Ben Anderson, Jazz Insider for KSL Sports. Ben, good morning. Thanks for waking up early.
Good morning, guys.
All right, we are curious. There are so many things to say about this Walker Kessler deal to the Lakers. What is the number one most important thing about this deal that people should get their arms around, even though there's 50 things to get your arms around?
The Jazz don't have a starting center. I think that's the big piece of it, is that you have to have that player on your team if you want to compete, and now you've got to go find one. And Jusuf Nurkic is not the worst stopgap, and Jackson Hayes is a fine backup for a year, but it's not going to get you where you want to go. You know, ultimately, those aren't the pieces. Ideally, Jusuf Nurkic should be your backup, and you've got a starter in front of him who's a better player and prevents you from scoring at the rim. So that's got to be the next big move for the Jazz.
Okay, assuming that move isn't necessarily now or this season, we'll see how the season progresses at the deadline and so forth. What do you think the lineups will be to try to patchwork that?
Yeah, I think you're going to start with Jusuf Nurkic at the 5, and then you'll have kind of what everyone expected: Jaren Jackson Jr., Lauri Markkanen, either Ace Bailey or Darian Peterson at the 2, and then Keontae at the 1. I have said I would not rule out a weird lineup where Svi Mykhailiuk starts, just so you're not having to say, well, Ace is the long-term starter going forward or Darren is the long-term starter going forward at the 2. And Svi Mykhailiuk had a very good year last year until basically he was benched because he was going to help them win too many games. So I wouldn't rule it out entirely, but I think that's going to be the rotation. And then, you know, coming off the bench, you're going to have probably Jackson Hayes playing a lot of the 5, but I think you'll be able to mix Kyle Filipowski in. I think you'll be able to mix Jaren Jackson Jr. in, and they'll get to 48 minutes that way.
I think the argument to bring 2 guys off the bench is a good one because you've got 5 guys who need the ball and need shots. So having 3 of the 5 on the court at all times, does that become the priority as far as setting rotation, and then you figure out the rest of the pieces from there?
Certainly can be. It would have been easier, I think, to bring both young guys off the bench if Jusuf Nurkic was your backup center, just because he can run the offense. He's so capable of doing that, as is Isaiah Collier at this point in his career. It would have made it easier for, you know, a lineup that featured at least 2 young guys, whether that's Peterson or Bailey, or, you know, maybe Cody Williams is still in that mix, or Bryce Sensabaugh, who is maybe not the youngest guy yet. But I think balancing that would have been a possibility. Maybe Bryce Sensabaugh just steps in and starts at the 2. Maybe he has a very good summer and jumps up, and we'll see. So I think if ideally in a perfect world, which is what the Jazz were hoping for, you were going to get somebody like Jusuf Nurkic coming off the bench, it would have made it a little bit easier to incorporate some of those young guys in the second unit. It's a little bit harder with Jackson Hayes, who doesn't create shots for anybody, doesn't create shots for himself, kind of needs to be spoon-fed a little bit. Nurk doesn't need a lot of shots, but he does know how to get them for others.
Assuming the deal would have been the same if the Jazz had matched, why not match it?
I don't think we can assume the deal would have been the same. I suspect the metric or the negotiation was this: we're going to give him $40 million. And the Jazz said, well, we want to sign and trade because we don't want, we'll match 40. If we have to match 40, we'll match 40, and you're not going to have a center. And they said, okay, what do we have to give you? And they said, well, 2 first-round draft picks and we won't match. And they said, well, we're not going to pay $40 million and 2 first-round draft picks. So they negotiate down a little bit when the Jazz get their draft picks, and kind of everybody wins with the exception of Walker Kessler, unfortunately for Walker in this situation. But it's the hard part about being a restricted free agent. You don't really have a lot of leverage. So if it had been 32, no strings attached, I think the Jazz probably match, and that's their starting center going forward. It's probably the same deal, 4 years, which I'm surprised the Jazz maybe didn't get there before this negotiation window opened, but we will learn and we'll see how accurate any of it is. I don't know if Walker wanted to be here. I know he sent out an Instagram post, but clearly he made every push to get out of Utah once the salary caps, once it became free agency, and then the salaries were presented in front of him.
I don't know if the number was 40, but the number getting leaked out was mid to high 30s. So it's pretty easy to say the number could have been 36 or 37, in which case the Lakers saved themselves a little bit of money and the Jazz acquired a couple of picks and the opportunity to pick up a 3rd and 4th one. And I think it's also safe to say that the Jazz liked Walker Kessler, but they didn't love him. Because when you love him, you don't offer him $28 million.
Yeah, he doesn't get the free agency.
Right.
Yeah, you signed him last year. If you love him,
Right.
you
Yes.
signed him last season, coming off of a really good year 3 as a young center, and the Jazz said they wanted to prioritize flexibility. You don't prioritize flexibility with the right guy. You have flexibility to sign the right guy. So they kind of showed their cards a little bit last year. Again, I think in a perfect world, Walker Kessler's back on this team and they've got him at a price they can afford and they match with Keontae George going forward and they just kind of have a young, solid starting 5. And when that no longer was a possibility, they had to find a way to pivot. And again, I don't think it's the ideal outcome. I think salvaging 2 unprotected future first-round picks and some swaps is good. I'm not sure it's like the unbelievable package some people have made it out to be because, it's probably at best it's half of that because you're going to have to reroute some of that stuff to get another player back. And if you're rerouting half of that stuff to get another player back, you're probably not getting somebody as good as Walker Kessler because if you could, the Lakers would have just done that.
Right. As far as a solution, a better solution, I should say, do you think that is going to happen maybe before the start of the season or during the season or beyond?
I would be surprised if it happened in the off season. I just don't see the market softening all that much. Now, it's possible. Maybe something sits in front of the Cleveland Cavaliers and they decide, we have to split up our big front court and they choose Evan Mobley over Jared Allen and suddenly they need a place to trade Jared Allen. And the Jazz could figure out a way to get that done, but it is hard. The Jazz do not have great salaries to match. They've got 2 huge salaries, and then they have Darren Peterson as their 3rd highest paid player, and none of those 3 guys are getting traded, I don't think. So that's where it gets really difficult, and they don't just have all this cap space to take somebody back into. So that's where the Jazz could run into some issues and why it might end up having to be, honestly, as late as next summer, but potentially in season. I think it's more likely it's in season than certainly before then.
I want to sit here and say top 6, 50 wins. That has to be the goal. But without Kessler and with that Kessler's value now sitting in assets that can't play in a game currently, I guess I have to soften on that top 6. I'm thinking top 8 now. If things go right, maybe they get top 6. I won't rule it out, but I don't think I can demand it anymore. What are you not ruling out? What are you demanding? What do you think? Assuming there's no more changes.
Yeah, the hard part is not only did the Jazz get a little bit worse, but the Lakers got better. Mm-hmm. So, that's another team you're directly competing with in the top 6. 6 spots, it's a 15% chance of getting there. And now the Lakers, very likely, if Luke is healthy with Walker, gets there. That's a top 6 team in the West. It's not a perfect team. I don't think they're a championship team, but one of those spots is gone and the Thunder are going to get one of those spots and the Spurs are going to get one of those spots. So that's 45% of it. If we're breaking it up in 15 percentage points, that's basically half. Now you're competing for 3 spots. Are you better than Houston now that Fred VanVleet comes back? Are you better than Minnesota? Maybe Minnesota made a huge mistake trading for LaMelo Ball, but the good news is the Clippers got worse, so they're probably not in competition there, but the Suns are trying to get better. Thought they got better by going out and getting Miles Bridges. So it's a narrow pathway. You're just going to have to win a lot of games. You're going to have to win a lot of games probably without being a very good defensive team because Walker would have helped there significantly. They should be better because Jaren's on the team and Darren Peterson's on the team, and he should be better than the Jazz's alternatives. But yeah, it's less likely today than it was yesterday that the Jazz have a top 6 team in the West. No question.
If Hayes is not on the floor, how good is this team offensively?
They can be fine. I think it's going to be a good team for the Jazz. I think if you have either Jaren at the 5 or Yusuf Nurkic at the 5, I think you're pretty dynamic. Now, Jaren's not, a great passer, certainly the way that Yusuf Nurkic is, but you can play 5 out. And I think that's probably another piece of this Walker Kessler trade that we haven't talked enough about, or I haven't talked enough about, which is just the Jazz just really loved playing 5 out last year. They loved all the space that their young players had. It's a huge reason Keontae George exploded. The second, or even maybe before the Jazz drafted Darren Peterson, I said if they were going to draft him, I would make bringing Yusuf Nurkic back a priority because he just creates so much space for those young guards. And he's done it his whole life. He was a part of Damian Lillard's explosion and CJ McCollum's explosion and then Devin Booker's explosion. And then he did it with Keontae George last year. So I think he's going to do that for Darren Peterson as well. That's going to create by itself a very good offense. And then the fact that, Lowry's got a solidified spot. You've got a much better bucket getter who can kind of go get something for himself and Jaren Jackson Jr. I think they can get top 10, especially if they're trying to win. If they're trying to go out there and win games, which now they have to, you can get to a top 10 offense with this team, which a top 10 offense and the 25th best defense does compete for the playoffs. It doesn't compete for a title, but it can get you into the postseason.
25th best defense. Come on, we got to set the bar higher than that. 25th?
24th.
I would love to, but you got to have more than one defensive player on your team.
Well, okay, but isn't Peterson a defensive player also? Isn't Ace a defensive player also? Markkanen, you got to up your game. You're making a ton of money. You've played more regular season games without a single playoff game than any active player in the NBA. He's not going to be a great defender, but he needs to be decent.
Yeah, he does need to be decent, and we have not seen it a whole lot. Again, he's not been asked to, but Keontae George has yet to be decent. Ace and Darren can get there, but they are young. How ready that is, I'm not sure. There is some guys break through and are okay as young players that end up being very good defenders. Not a ton are really good early in their career, especially on the perimeter. There's just too many Jordan Clarksons out there who love having a rookie on them and will just torch them every time they get matched up. These guys are just too good early in their, or later in their careers compared to the young defenders that are coming into the league. So, no, I mean, we'll see what the Jazz do. I think they're going to go and try and get some defense in free agency. They have to, because they know that they're the 25th or 28th best defense in the NBA as it stands today. Jaren will help. Jaren knowing where to be and telling everyone else where to be will certainly be helpful, but you've got to have guys who actually, one-on-one or late in the game can get a stop. So that's going to be a priority. So, yeah, if Darren's good and Jaren is good, which we know he is, and then you go and get another wing piece, maybe you can start to build it together, and Lowry is your fourth or fifth best player on the roster, or best defender on the roster, is more passable. Or if you can make it so Keontae George is the fifth best defensive player on the roster in the starting lineup, you're probably in better shape. But those guys have to take a major step forward if the Jazz want to get out of the 20s.
Not that he would need to give the final approval, but how much do you think they kept Jaren Jackson informed, because this has an opportunity or a situation where it could impact him greatly with Kessler not being there?
Probably not a lot. I don't think at this point the Jazz are really beholden to anybody on the roster. The Lakers probably went and got Walker at any cost because they're entirely beholden to Luka Doncic. And before that, they were entirely beholden to LeBron James, and to the point where they had to draft his son. Like some guys are so good and you have to go out and sign their brothers if you're Giannis Antetokounmpo. I don't know if the Jazz were ever talking to Jaren about, do we have to have Walker back or anything along those lines. They may ask Jaren what type of center he likes playing next to. He's played next to Steven Adams. He's played next to a lot of different types of players. And he may have a preference. He may like guys who give him space. He may like other guys who defend centers so he can be kind of a help guy who swings around. And even if they don't ask him, they'll go back and look at all of his tape and figure out what seems to be the best and what the analytics seem to imply he needs. But he'd probably love a better rebounder next to him because he's not much of a rebounder, and somebody to give him a little bit of room to operate in the post. I'm sure he would love that as well. So I don't think they probably ran it through Jaren at all, but I wouldn't be surprised if they consult with him just to see what types of players he's played against, who he likes, who he doesn't like, along those lines.
Don't you think it's going to be center by committee? Yes, upgraded, but they don't have the money to pay every position. They're paying the guys who are going to play the 3 and the 4 primarily. And plenty of teams have been very good with center by committee to some degree. So isn't that the way they go? Even if it's an upgraded center by committee. Upgrade Nurkic, upgrade Jackson, whatever.
Yeah, I think you're right. At some point, you can't pay everyone $30 million in the starting lineup. And that's where they're pretty rapidly heading, and maybe they don't even getting there. They don't end up getting there by the time Darren Peterson is signing his second contract or Ace Bailey signing his second contract. And you've probably moved off of Lowry Markkanen or Jaren Jackson Jr. or Keontae George at that point, if it ends up being the case. I don't know. That's so far down the road. As far as basketball years go, a lot can change. But yeah, at some point you have to choose, well, this is just going to be our $12 million player or our $15 million player or even 20, but that's not a ton of money in today's NBA, especially for a starter. So yes, I think you're going to have a couple of guys and probably a couple of guys that give you different looks. And Nurkic might be a part of that. He gives you a really different look than a lot of centers. And then maybe you do have an upgraded Jackson Hayes somewhere else that does provide some rim defense and some athleticism and some size. And you value that, but they both play 24 minutes a night. I honestly thought Mitchell Robinson was going to be the contingency plan for all of these teams, Detroit, Utah, or LA, if they didn't get Walker or Jalen Duren. And then you saw Mitchell Robinson sign yesterday morning with the Boston Celtics for 3 years, $45 million, which is the perfect committee player, right? That's 24 minutes, plays defense. He's kind of a specialist, but he is very useful. And he would have actually worked really well, I thought, next to Yusuf Nurkic, as far as you have one style when he's on the floor and another style when he's off the floor. And that's just not the direction they went.
We saw Quinn Snyder give the ball to Donovan Mitchell. How do you think Darren Peterson will be handled?
I think they will test that a lot early on, especially in the summer league. They'll get to run some sets with him as a point guard and see how he operates there and operates with a screener and operates without a screener, because Will Hardy doesn't actually run that many screens. So if he needs a screen, they're going to figure that out. I'll be curious if Micah Handlogden or whoever the Jazz's center is in this playoffs or in this summer league can run some of the dribble handoff stuff that he's going to run a lot with Yusuf Nurkic and see how he operates out of that. Conceivably, it should be pretty good. But if you recognize early on, hey, he's just not quite there as a ball handler or a playmaker. I mean, you saw the video Chandler Holt tweeted out. You just put him in the corner and let him hit open threes, and there should be a lot of threes for him. You know, that corner shot should be available for somebody on the Jazz this year. And if he's knocking them down at a high level, that should be very valuable, because you have to throw bodies at Keontae George. You have to throw bodies at Lauri Markkanen. You have to throw bodies at Jaren Jackson Jr. And if you've got then Yusuf Nurkic offensively kind of orchestrating as somebody who is a slight danger to step out and hit a three, but can certainly hit passers, I think you're going to see Darren find a healthy role at worst as a shooter. But yeah, I'm curious to see how his playmaking goes. That was probably his biggest weakness outside of availability at Kansas. The 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio is not ideal. It's also not a death sentence. Keontae George had a negative assist to turnover ratio. Ace Bailey had a negative assist to turnover ratio, and those guys are fine.
Ben, we talk about pretty much all the players who are under contract for the Jazz in one role or another, and there's one guy who almost never gets talked about. And maybe at this point he's simply a $6 million contract to go into a trade somewhere down the line. But maybe he's also the guy who just go out and gets it done, and then Will Hardy looks at everybody else and like, hey, everybody else has got a rep, but you know who gets the deflection? You know who gets the rebound? You know who makes the pass is John Konchar. What do you think his future is with the Jazz? Because he is under contract for the next season. Actually, he might be under contract for the next 2 seasons. Well, what do you think his future is?
Yeah, he should compete for a spot in this rotation, and if he ends up beating out a Cody Williams, it probably makes sense. He's played a lot everywhere. Every coach he's ever played for, he's only ever been in Memphis, but he's had several coaches and they all seem to turn to him, and generally you just start to believe coaches. Those guys know a lot about basketball and they know a lot about what helps you win, and they rely on him in these very specific roles. And one night he can grab you 8 rebounds, and one night he can get you 5 assists, and one night he can score 12 points. But he doesn't need any one of them to be happy. And I think those guys are really valuable. And again, if he doesn't need shots on a team that has a lot of guys that want shots, that becomes really valuable. It's also Cody's, sell if he's trying to get into the rotation, is I'm not going to need a lot of shots. I'll finish some transition opportunities and maybe I can get some pokeaways and create some shots for myself on fast breaks. But no, I think John Konchar, is a winner. And winners are going to be key on this roster, and he's proven he knows how to win. He also has a good relationship with Jaren Jackson Jr., so I'm sure those guys have some chemistry together on and off the floor. So I would expect to see him. I think the Jazz are going to play 10 guys, and I bet he's one of them.
Yeah, you just answered my question in terms of how far or how deep do you think they will go by saying 10. That's literally was going to ask that question. So now I have to be on my toes since you took my answer and question away. With that in mind, I'm looking forward, and it's a little bit of a subset. It's not the primary story, but the competition between and among those guys from 6 to 10, I think that has an opportunity to be very interesting. And I'm really intrigued. And obviously the starters and how Peterson fits in and blah, 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 all those things will be primary. But how much are you looking forward to see who is in that rotation from 6 to 10 and maybe from 7 to 10, and what their roles are compared to what their roles have been the last couple of years when they weren't trying to win?
Yeah, let's look at the starting 5 to just take half of that conversation out. It's going to be Keontae George. It's going to be one of Ace Bailey or Darren Peterson. It's going to be Lauri Markkanen. It's going to be Jaren Jackson Jr. It's going to be Yusuf Nurkic, I would assume. So that's 5 of the 10. Whoever doesn't get that starting spot, Darren Peterson or Ace Bailey plays in the second unit. So that's 6. Kyle Filipowski is going to play. That's 7. Jackson Hayes is going to play probably as a backup. That's 8, unless he's just so far down the roster. But he was better than DeAndre Ayton for the Lakers at times last year, so I suspect he plays. That's 8. That leaves 2 spots for Isaiah Collier, Bryce Sensabaugh, Cody Williams, Svi Mikhailiuk, and John Konchar, who we were just talking about. Like, that's a meat grinder. That's really, really hard to break into that spot. And Will Hardy might rotate some of the young guys in and some of the young guys out. And if Darren Peterson's the backup point guard and Isaiah Collier doesn't play, maybe Isaiah Collier's out of the conversation. So, yeah, that's going to be really, really difficult for guys who I don't want to say didn't earn minutes. They made the NBA. They earned their minutes by getting to the league in the first place, but aren't competing for a playoff spot in their first 1, 2, 3 years. And now that's got to be the big conversation. So yeah, you're going to have to be sharp. It's going to have to go down to the most consistent players, which is why I won't be surprised if Svi and John Conchar end up playing.
I think we're going to see, if you look at the total number of minutes, I think you're going to see an 11th and 12th player emerge because so many guys are going to play 60, 65. Maybe a few guys will play 70 games. It's not going to be the wholesale injury report that became really the only story on game morning every game last year, certainly the last half of the season. But there's still going to be a lot of that, and that's going to open the door. You know, you're out, but then suddenly you're in because of who's out for that night or that week.
Yeah. How many guys play 2,000 minutes? You know, that's kind of the high number, the higher number now in the NBA that's getting you, 70 games at 30 minutes a night. So how many guys are actually going to get to 2,000 minutes? In recent years, it was like only Keontae George, maybe Isaiah Collier, and that was just kind of out of need. They needed somebody to dribble the ball, and they didn't have a whole lot of guys to dribble the ball consistently and kind of set up the offense, and they were invested in developing those guys. Yeah, do you get 12 guys at 1,400 minutes? Is that more realistic? Or, on average, 12 guys end up getting above 600 minutes, 800 minutes. That means they've kind of broken into the rotation. And, Jaron's going to miss games and Lowry's going to miss games and Nurk probably going to miss a few games. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities, but opening night, that shouldn't be the case.
Ben, we appreciate it as always. We'll hear you at 2 o'clock today with Jake, and who knows what will happen between now and then.
See you guys.
All right. Thanks, Ben. Ben joining us, and he'll be on the air again this afternoon. All right, DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Caller 12. You want to do it now or you want to do it after the break?
Let's do it now.
We're going to do it now. Do it now. We'll do it live. Caller 12 right now wins a lush American flag blanket. Celebrating the USA's 250th birthday, courtesy of Minky Couture. Incredibly soft, the lush patriotic flag blanket is perfect for celebrating the season. This plush patriotic design available in one size. It makes a cozy addition to summer gatherings, holiday decor, or everyday lounging. Has the flag design on both sides of the blanket for a complete look from every angle. Sized to match a standard American flag, it also includes an exclusive America 250 Minky Couture label created to commemorate the nation's semi-quincentennial celebration. Semi-quincentennial, PK. Did you have that on your bingo card this morning?
You're great at that.
Oh, great. Thanks. Hi, I read for a living. Okay, DJ and PK. Caller 12 right now. Call 801-575-ZONE. 801-575-ZONE and win your semi-quincentennial blanket. Yes, PK, give it a ring. You could win. Hi, this is Bob. I want to win the blanket. All right, we're right back with everything you missed in this show. Next, stay with us. Slacker Road headlines brought to you by Trajan Wealth. Call Trajan Wealth today, your local trusted financial fiduciary. Call them at 1-855-TRAJAN1 or visit their website at TrajanWealth.com. What have you missed over the last 3.5 hours? So much stuff, but mostly reaction to Walker Kessler. He's going to L.A. I think we can all agree Walker lost a few million in this trade, didn't he? That's what happened there, PK. It's only $4.5 million more, and now Walker's going to lose, I don't know, at least 2.5, maybe $3 million of that to taxes. What the heck was the point of that? That whole rumor about mid to high 30s. It makes sense that once the Jazz told the Lakers they were going to match, the Lakers said, what do we have to get done? And the Jazz get some draft picks, and the Lakers give Walker a lower number. Oh, well, there you go. Life is a restricted free agent.
Yeah, but I'm not going to bleed for the guy. It's
pile of money,
enormous amount of money, and he's only 24 years of age. So the way the system is set up, you become the unrestricted, and before you even hit 30, and if you play to the level that you think you can, then whatever you didn't make, you'll make up. So you have to look at it. You can't just slice it into parts. You have to look at it in its entirety. And so he's going to be handsomely compensated at NBA comparative levels if he plays the way he believes he can play. And we'll see in 4 years what that looks like. And then he'll just recoup that, right? So I don't I'm not going to bleed for the guy, even from the NBA sense. Now, from the everyday average life, obviously, wow. I wish I was his best friend. Actually, I wish I was his father.
The Jazz liked him. They didn't love him. They could have offered him more. If he expands that offensive game, he could be a steal for the Lakers. If he doesn't, then maybe the Jazz can find an upgrade somewhere else. Or at least find most of the production for less money. It does feel a little stopgap center by committee. And it may always be centered by committee. Maybe it could be centered by a better committee. A more talented committee.
Down the line, I don't know about right now.
I think it's down the line. I think it's down the line.
Yeah, but
maybe not far down the line.
There's not a ton of players at his position that are all that good.
And that's why you often see center by committee.
If you just look at it, in these guys, they're by position because there's not that many of them, and the game has changed so much that they tend to be a little bit overvalued because they have a specific skill that they can use. And the Jazz will find that player with that specific skill. And when they do, they will kill them.
Thank you, Liam. And I think the committee is more than two players. I think Filipowski and Jackson are part of the committee. You can go a little smaller because there are times other teams are going to go a little smaller too. So,
well, how big is Conchar?
Not big enough to play center.
Yeah, but he's got a lion tattoo. So just like, Wes Unseld wasn't very big.
Yeah, different era, PK, but thanks.
Or this big man was more important than it is today.
People right now, this is a whole generation of people going, who's Wes Unseld?
Well, they know he's a former coach, Wes Unseld Jr.
Okay, don't get me distracted. The Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers. You think the Jazz shouldn't have been making a deal with the Lakers? How about these sworn rivals, the Sixers and the Celtics, who've battled for decades, along with the Knicks? Those three have gone at it over time so many times.
Yeah, those are the three. Yeah.
Right. And now the Celtics trade Jaylen Brown to Philadelphia for Paul George, 2 first-round picks, and 2 second-round picks. And the Sixers, if they have Embiid, then they look loaded. But even without him, they look pretty good. This is a team that, and they're going to have a guy with a chip on his shoulder. And they got a young guy who ought to be improving. Arrow's up in Philly. They ought to be encouraged here.
Yeah, but I mean, we'll see how Jaylen Brown is. Is he just on the verge of being nuts and being a cancer destroyer chemistry-wise and all that stuff? And I think that the thing with Embiid is it sounds good. Okay, Embiid is there, then he's not there. Well, that's not something that you just easily adjust to. Either you're going to be there or you're not going to be there, because then if he's there, that changes everything. It literally changed the entire dynamic of the team. And if he's not there, that changes it too. So I don't think, we'll just plug him in and he'll add his 23 points a game and 14 rebounds or whatever, and away we'll go. I don't think it works that way. But it did look like, they got a player who's better than Paul George. So we'll see what Boston does there. But yeah, I mean, that's a crazy trade. Growing up, I knew everything about the Knicks. I knew everything about Boston, and I knew everything about Philadelphia, right? I mean, those were the teams that when you lived in the Northeast and you're a basketball fan like I was, you just concentrated so much on that. And then you should have seen me 1 year later, like, I got to pay attention to these guys called the Suns. Who are these people? My adjustment was not smooth in many ways.
But it's basically a 6-hour drive from Boston to Philly. It's basically basically Salt Lake to Vegas, except in between is New York City, not Scipio. So let's go. You three.
Right.
And so that'll make it super interesting. And we were talking earlier about, are the Jazz going to be a Christmas Day game? I guess the odds of that went down a little, but not necessarily a lot. The odds of some combination of Boston, Philly, and New York playing each other are always pretty good, and I think they're great right now. A Boston-Philly game, and then the Knicks, give them anybody else maybe give them Cleveland. Yeah, you can see the 2 Eastern games pretty easily, pretty quickly for Christmas Day.
Yeah, I agree.
Celtics signed Mike Conley, former Jazz man, on a 1-year deal, and they added Mitchell Robinson, taking him away from the Knicks on a 3-year deal. So there you go. More moves for those guys. We also talked a little hockey this morning. Wherever you get your podcasts, listen to Greg Wyshynski, ESPN senior NHL writer, as the Utah Mammoth try to do two things at once. Protect their future, and their future 5, 6, 7 years down the line should be really good. But they got so many prospects, they don't need them all in 5 or 6, 7 years. So leverage them now and try to make the club better right now. And there's a definite the future is now feel to the moves that the Mammoth made in the last 24 hours.
Well, I think the opportunity to win as much as possible now helps the future because you want the young guys to be in the most pressurized situations to get that experience and know where they're at. I mean, Armstrong talked about that. Go listen to what he was talking about yesterday, where he says that it is something when they took the ice, they looked at Vegas and they looked at their guys, and Vegas had more veteran experience and all that stuff. So let those young guys, the younger guys, and mid-younger guys, so to speak, that get them in the most brutal conditions with the highest pressure going on, and that'll pay off for down the line. So you're kind of getting the best of both if you can win at a decent enough level now, and they've established a foundation and there's not going back. It's only potentially going forward. Now, I don't think that just because they made these moves that, they're going to win that first round playoff series. I don't know that because obviously we don't even know who they're going to play. So we'll have to see how that plays out, but I can see the philosophy behind it.
Other stuff going on. Junior Caminero, homers in 6 straight games, 8 home runs in 6 games. You ever get in a cage, even in batting practice, and feel like the stroke was that good and you could hammer that many home runs? Who gets to have that
softball,
feeling?
Slow pitch softball.
Slow pitch softball. You could hit 8. You could hit 8 home runs in 6 games in slow pitch. Have a short porch in left field.
Well, we played at Wilson Park in Torrance, and there was no fence. There was a field on the other side. So I couldn't hit it over their heads. I'd have to cue it down the line.
And then start running, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Dansby Swanson has driven in 26 runs in the last 10 games, which ties the record held by multiple players, including Lou Gehrig and Joe DiMaggio. Nice list to join. Good work.
Or have you gone Joe DiMaggio?
Right?
Yes. Swanson, he's a decent player. He was the number 1 pick coming out of Vanderbilt several years ago, and you want to bemoan the Padres for getting whipped by 20 runs. Well, I can up that because Dansby Swanson was a Diamondback, the number 1 pick, and then they traded him for Shelby Miller. Thank you, Tony La Russa and Dave Stewart. That was the worst trade in the history of sports.
Cubs did win 23-3. I would like to bemoan that. 8 of the runs came in the 8th inning when they had a catcher in there throwing eephus pitches.
So essentially it's meaningless.
Exactly. Now, the fact that the Cubs homered in almost every inning. Let's hear it for the 4th and the 7th. They didn't homer there, but they homered in the other 6 innings. That was brutal. But the whole thing's been brutal. It's been a brutal week, and they're going to the Dodgers now for 4, and great. Awesome.
Holiday weekend in Chavez Ravine.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty good to me, man.
Yes.
With their bitter arch rivals.
Well, it's a one-way rivalry, but sure.
Yeah, I mean.
For the Padres, it is. In San Diego, when the Dodgers are coming to town, which they did last weekend, that is as big a deal as it gets right there.
It's like the Dodgers or the BYU of the WAC Mountain West.
It was the Dodgers and BYU and the Raiders. Those were when I was a kid growing up, those were the teams that came in, and it was a big deal for each of the opposing teams. The top dog. Speaking of top dogs, the United States, top dog again into the round of 16. They're going to play Belgium after beating Bosnia. I'm having a hard – I think now they've done what they were supposed to do, PK. They had to make it to the round of 16 because they've done that in 4 of the last 6 Cups. You're at home with this golden generation. Man, if you don't make it that far, Bosnia's got about as many people as Utah. So we got them outnumbered. We ought to have more good players, and we ought to have a better team than we do. Belgium, this is the first team they're going to face in the tournament that's ranked top 20 in the world. I think they're actually ranked 10th. This is a real test, and they're going to have to do it without their leading goal scorer who got a red card. Man, that was harsh, but Balogun's out, so now they got to figure it out. And this is a game, if they win and get to the quarters, then they've had a good tournament. If they don't, it's a bit of a disappointment. There's no way around it. And it's going to be hard being shorthanded, but Suck it up. And they did in the last half hour, shorthanded last night. That could have, they only have one goal. That could have gone another way, but they defended well and eventually scored on a really good free kick.
Yeah, I mean, but they never lose in Santa Clara.
Thanks, PK. Actually, I think they did. I think they lost a friendly. But they don't lose World Cup games in Santa Clara.
They were friendly. Nobody had a friendly. It's an exhibition game.
Yep.
Let's do American terms so we can understand. It's an exhibition game.
Okay, here's a Jersey.
It don't count.
Here's a Jersey term. It's a big freaking game Monday. That's what it is. To get to the quarterfinals is a big deal. To beat one of the elite teams in the world is a big deal. The one loss they had doesn't matter. That just showed that they don't have enough depth to, run their 20th best player out there and win. Okay, well, you don't have to. But you need a little bit of depth because you're going to be without your top goal scorer.
Yeah, for sure.
So the World Cup carries on. It was a fairly dramatic day yesterday. And you want drama. Tomorrow night, Madison Square Garden, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce getting married. The Big Apple. Seriously, what sports venue, PK? What sports venue is perfect for weddings? Rose Bowl, Wrigley, Fenway, MSG. What else have you got?
The sanctity of marriage unites one with another. And I'll even stay politically correct here, which is unusual for me.
I see what you did there.
Thank you. I'm learning from you.
The Horseshoe, Columbus, Ohio. There it is.
No.
Sorry.
I want a chapel.
Oh.
Give me a nice drive-through chapel in Vegas.
A chapel. A drive-through chapel.
I was once in a wedding line in a drive-through chapel in Vegas.
Well, if you're going to get married in a big-time chapel, then it's the most famous chapel. You got to go Sistine, right? I don't know if they do weddings there.
Well, I've never been to Greece, so I don't know about that.
Oh, nice. Well played. Notre Dame? Have you been to Notre Dame? The church in Paris, not the football stadium in the university in Indiana.
I've never been to Europe.
Oh, okay.
So I haven't. And you taunt me because you've been to Europe multiple times.
Nope.
I haven't.
Nope, not true. I've been
once. Multiple in my mind because you went to multiple countries.
We did do that.
The same thing.
We did do that,
so
and we did
the same thing.
We flew home from Paris, and we had 24 hours, 36 hours, whatever it was, and we did go to Notre Dame. And the interesting thing is, you walk in, all this tourists there, and it's huge. And like in one part, like mass is going on. I mean, there's a priest over there, and there's people, and over here there's tourists, and they're buying stuff. It was bizarre, crazy.
Yes, and I know the Mass. Our Father who art in heaven. Believe me, I know the Mass. I'm nothing if not Mass.
And 50 yards away, people are gawking and buying souvenirs. Go figure. All right, DJ and PK, we're going to take a break. When we come back, your feedback next. Stay with us. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. The Utah Jazz have lost Walker Kessler. He's going to the Lakers. The reaction has overwhelmed us, PK. Over 100 comments on the Facebook post you put up. And that is always like after 100, you're just showing off. That's a major topic anytime you hit 100. I think it's 122 now. Jeffrey's reaction, I'm surprised Walker commanded that much on the free agent market. I'm glad the Jazz saved the cash. They can get what he gives for less. Getting all the Jazz did could be a fleece job. You just don't know what the Lakers are going to be when we get to 2031 and 2033.
Yeah, true, obviously. And also we don't know what the negative effect on the Jazz is going to be in the 26-27 season by not having him either.
We'll never know exactly because we won't know exactly how good they could have been without him. But right. I suspect 5 games, but I think where they are in the standings, you move 5 games, you could move several spots. Yeah, you can move several spots. I think this trade could be the difference between being in the 3, 4, 5, 6 group and having a chance to win, and maybe not, maybe you get smoked, who knows, but at least you have a chance to win a playoff series versus you're in the play-in and then you're probably 7-8 and you're probably wildly overmatched. I wouldn't be surprised if that is the pain point here in the short run. Obviously, I'm guessing on both those, but if I had to guess, that's what I'd guess right now.
I might have a little more optimism, but I can't just wildly say you're nuts by having that take.
I think that there are 5 teams in the West that are clearly better than the Jazz right now. Now, injuries could change that. Injuries could open a spot or two. And as a matter of fact, injuries usually do. But just assuming and the injuries can happen to you, but just assuming that everybody's healthy, which is a dangerous thing to assume, Oklahoma City's better, San Antonio's better. I think the Lakers are better. I think Denver's better. And I think Houston is probably better. So there's 5 teams.
Well, let's see where LeBron goes too.
All right. Yes, there's still moves to come. And what does he do? And there may be more teams than the 5. I'm not saying the Jazz are 6, but I think they're competing for the 6th spot. And Minnesota's competing for that spot. Phoenix and Portland would like to compete for that spot. The Jazz, I think the Clippers are pretty clearly going backwards. The Jazz are going to pass some teams. I still think, they should be in front of 5 teams and get in the top 10.
Well, now they have a collective chip because, wow, you're not nearly as good as you were 2 days ago. What are you going to do about it?
Go out and play with the chip on your shoulder and win. And also, because you do have a deep roster, there's going to be a lot of competition. And we'll hear about how much these guys like each other and how much they get along. But there's also guys, if we can figure out the difference in playing time between guys 8 or 9 and guy 12, or guy 4 or 5 or guy 8 or 9, well, they can. So how much playing time do you want? So that ought to help lift the whole group too.
There's 3 things I want: playing time, money, and winning.
I got to say, I can't say he's automatically wrong, but Ben bugged me when he said they're the 25th best defensive team. They've been 30, and Tim Lacombe has said all along, hey, part of the problem here is you made the meeting optional. PK, have you and I ever gone to meetings, and it turns out people treat them like they're optional, and in some cases they were labeled optional? So when a meeting's labeled optional, a lot of people aren't going to show up. Well, defense has been optional because they were tanking. Now they're trying to win, and they have a deep enough roster. Defense isn't optional anymore. Will Hardy will pull you, and then when you ask him why you're not playing, he's going to point to your defense. So Tim's thought is that they can improve defensively just because winning and defense are no longer optional. They're not tanking. Everybody knew what the deal was, and everybody knows the deal has changed. So I don't think they can be a great defensive team as currently constituted, but I don't see why they can't get to 15th or 20th.
I think all their stats were untrue.
Yeah.
Because the purpose behind the game is to win. And once that purpose is removed, like you talked about the U.S. team in the game that they lost in soccer. Well, the purpose of that game wasn't to win.
Right.
Right. They'd already clinched. They did what they needed to do. So why am I going to worry about that?
Yep.
And it's not like I totally blow it off either, but I'm saying, why am I going to worry about, oh my gosh, they don't have this, that. I watched that game, and that game had a feel that wasn't like the other games. And I'm not a big soccer guy, and I could figure it out. Right. So they were playing so many guys, I couldn't even name you half the guys without a roster. And I'm supposed to think that then equates to an accurate standing in the defensive categories or offensive categories in the league. I don't know that I can really do that. Now, this year, the answer would be yes, it would reflect, and it's going to reflect accurately. But I'm not really sure where they come in on either end of the floor that way. That's something that's going to have to unfold as the season progresses.
Greg says, I'm surprised. I think we got a lot back for Kessler. Late first-round picks are now almost as valuable as early picks with the new draft lottery rules. A couple months ago, I wouldn't have been super happy about that haul, but now it looks pretty good. And I think you have to factor on top of that that the organization, and I get it's changed because Austin's here now, but a lot of the same people are still here. The organization has done a pretty good job of identifying late first, early second-round players and developing them. It's a different deal. You're trying to find somebody with one skill who can help you play minutes. You're not trying to find, necessarily the star who's going to carry the team. Maybe you get fortunate and you do, but they've done a pretty good job with those guys.
And when are those picks available? 30 and 31 and 33?
Yep.
What the crap am I even talking about that for now?
Well, I think the other thing is what you pointed out. By the time it gets to 31, who says the Jazz are going to have that pick? Those picks are valuable.
And who
assets.
says it's not going to be a top 5 pick?
And it could be. We don't even know what the lottery rules will be that far out. And they may have traded it for a veteran along the way who really helps them. So yeah, they have assets. And we'll see how they get deployed.
Amen, Captain.
Brad, I've said this all along. Name a center Danny Ainge has spent max dollars on. He doesn't spend max money on centers.
Robert Parrish.
Pre-salary cap, Robert Parrish. Can we keep going or we got to go to break? Wrap it up. Okay, we got to wrap it up, PK. For a holiday weekend, you have anything to say before you go off to enjoy fireworks on a 3-day weekend?
Enjoy it, man. Only comes around once a year.
True that right there. All right, coming up next, Scotty G and Tim Lacombe. The coach on the way. Stay with us.
Evening. Buyer's remorse. Buy a new car? I'll be moving in. Let's get started.
Sorry, I think there's been a mistake. I bought it from Carvana.
You what?
Yeah, great price. I even have 7 days to love it or return it.
So there's no...
No buyer's remorse. More like buyer's rejoice.
I guess I'll let myself out. Congratulations. I mean it.
Buyer's rejoice. Buy your car today on Carvana.
Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.